You're tuned into the Music Industry 360 podcast, your all-access pass to all things music business. From insider secrets to essential resources, we've got you covered. I'm your host, Randall Foster. I'm Chief Creative Officer at Symphonic, and I'm thrilled to have on with me today our CEO and founder, Jorge Brea.
I'm thrilled to be here with you, Randall. You've been doing an awesome job on these. I love it.
Well, you know, the jury's still out on this one, so let's try to get.
I know, exactly. We'll see how that goes.
Make sure it's okay. So just a little background on Jorge. Jorge founded Symphonic approximately 18 years ago and has been building it ever since. I've had the pleasure of working here with him for nearly the last 6 years, and we've made leaps and bounds in the last 6 years, and the change I've seen in the industry has been incredible. There's a lot of change for good. And there's also change that has presented challenges. And one thing we're going to talk about today is one of those big challenges, or one of the big headwinds facing not only distributors, but labels as well. That's streaming fraud. Yeah. So Jorge, can you start at the beginning? We don't know anything about it. Tell us what streaming fraud is.
Sure. So, it's an interesting topic first, and I think it's a great intro to be able to say how much we've seen the industry change for the good and for the bad, because streaming fraud, I would say, has definitely gotten more and more bad over the years. But for what artificial streaming is another term for it, and streaming fraud is effectively, if you have a song on Spotify, let's say you find some tool or technology or marketing service that is going to guarantee you X amount of streams. A lot of artists out there, when they're looking to promote their material, they're seeing, hey, this is a service that can get you 100,000 streams for $1,500 or whatever that might be. Those services are creating essentially fake streams. And what they're doing is they're going online and on an automated basis, they're pressing play on your song, every minute or, for consecutive amounts of time. And they're duplicating that over multiple periods of servers at times, right? So like if you're hiring a company and they're saying that they're going to get you, 100,000 streams, they might have 50 servers that they're using that's going to play your song a number of times to get you those streams. And effectively, that is something that is streaming fraud. That's something that the DSPs do not look upon kindly. And really, it's just not organic. And the big negative on it is that it actually drains the royalty pool of Spotify. And the way that legitimate artists get paid, let's say on Spotify, for example, is you have a premium ad supported side, and then you have the freemium side, which is, you have the premium and then you have ads. And all of that goes into one big giant pool. And from that pool, however many streams you get a certain amount of market share. That's how you get dollars. So with bad actors or technologies or services that are trying to artificially inflate and create plays, that is effectively draining that pool and taking legitimate monies away, legitimate streams away from others.
So that's what I've read in articles and and we have colloquially referred to as bot farms, right? Is that the same thing, right?
Correct.
I think it's really important. I think it's really important to note that not only does it drain the pool, like there's a financial risk and challenge that it creates, but it also falsely represents an audience that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And I think we've all seen artists that have massive numbers but can't sell a ticket. Yeah. And I think that there's trickle down economics that harm the artist even further than the risk of being, in trouble with the DSPs, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and generally, if a DSP or even a company like us is aware that you might be conducting yourself in that manner, it can really, really impact your presence within a company like ourselves or even the DSP itself. And a lot of the DSPs are getting much more sophisticated, and they're also starting to provide us data to better inform us if someone is either doing bad acting or effectively caught up in the bad acting, because the techniques that the fraudsters are using now are unfortunately affecting innocent parties as well.
Yeah, no, and I've definitely seen that at play. So let's focus on the DSPs for just a moment, and just dial in. I know each DSP is handling it a little bit differently. Some are handling it a ton, and some are maybe not yet quite to the party yet. But what are they doing about streaming fraud? What are the changes we've seen in 2024?
Yeah. So first, I would say they're being much more collaborative with companies like us, which is a great thing. Most DSPs, or some of the largest DSPs in the world right now, are at least providing us analytical data, whether it's on a daily basis or monthly basis. And we're using that to get a sense of how many songs are creating what they label as artificial. And we're using that information to be able to then discuss with our clients, and in certain cases, also take action if we're able to determine that the person behind these streams perhaps isn't a real person, or is caught up within a company that's taking advantage of that as well. So I would say DSPs for sure have gotten much more sophisticated around monitoring and providing data that is useful, so that now at this point we're not kind of working with ourselves and making assumptions, I would say.
And what are they doing? Like, what are the punitive items they're doing? Are they, are there? I know part of the challenges here are financial, and it seems that there are some financial penalties. Correct?
Yeah. So first, and as you mentioned, most DSPs, they all have different sort of rules and regulations. One of them is charging penalty fees, and we are in taking those penalty fees, and in certain cases, actually eating those fees, because there might not be royalties to cover those fees, but generally we're passing that down to the user. Even before that, the reports that we get is actually providing us artificial streams that are excluded from the royalty payments. So effectively, if you're using a company that is deemed to be artificial, the DSP will not be paying those royalties out, even to us. As the nature of distribution is, if you make a royalty on Spotify, the payment flows through us, and then we in turn then pay to you after we've taken our share, if there is a share, for example. So, penalty fees are happening with at least one DSP. Others are just excluding it from the payments. And then other DSPs are actually just taking music down without us even having the awareness, unless we get that report on a monthly basis. So it's definitely becoming much more harsh. And I would say that in the future, it could potentially increase and continue to be much more harsh, because really the DSPs and us are much more incentivized by helping to reduce the problem than to let it persist.
Well, I think people underestimate the level of data that's
Yeah.
available on them and on their music. Folks, DSPs know exactly who's listening to you, where they're listening to you, how long they're listening to you, and if they're real.
Yep.
And so it mystifies me that people would pay for this kind of thing. And I know that sometimes, an aunt is trying to do a favor for their favorite nephew, and gets a great targeted ad on Instagram, and $50 for 5,000 spins. That sounds like a great deal. Y'all, if you do the math on that, it's still an awful deal.
Yeah,
Before you get busted, right?
it's a bad Christmas present from your grandma if she's buying you fake streams.
That's absolutely right. So okay, so we've talked about the DSPs a little bit, the punitive nature of what they're doing, and the awfulness of inflating your numbers when the warm bodies aren't there for you. Let's talk about Symphonic, about our actions, because I know every distributor is having to deal with this right now, but we've taken some pretty pointed steps to make sure that we mitigate this. Can you walk us through?
Yeah. So, and for everyone that's listening, we're pretty transparent about these steps and actually have them listed on our website under the About section, under everything that's trust and safety. But I'll highlight a couple of key ones. It actually starts with really knowing the customer that we're working with. So for folks that are listening that might not, fully be aware of this, Symphonic, it really essentially has two sides to the business. One that is web-based, and then another that is Randall, myself, and all of our team members actually working with artists, very, very personalized, and actually signing them, intaking their catalogs, and doing custom deals and so forth. For the web-based side, we wanted to have that because we do believe that we have great technology that everyone can benefit from, no matter where you're at in your career. Like, it's our dream of sorts to be able to say, you can start your career with us and also grow with us throughout. And that's why we felt it's important to have had a web component where you can apply for a percentage-based model that offers you marketing, or you can just start your career with a DIY offering that's similar to our competitors that are in the market and so forth. So with that said, we did launch a web-based side to complement our deal making side, as I like to call it. And what we realized through the web-based side is we didn't really get a great sense of who these folks were that were wanting to apply or sign up. And because of that, we did get a sense that more fraud was coming in because of the fact that we weren't really aware of who we were dealing with. So one of the first things that we did in the past year and continue to iterate even in 2024 is we've expanded our KYC and we added identity verification. So if you are coming through the web-based side where you're signing up and or applying, and we have no idea who you might be, we felt it'd be important that you provide us identification on who you are that validates towards what you're agreeing to with us. So before you upload a song, you have to provide your driver's license or passport or any identification that works for your country, and that effectively gives us confidence on who it is that we're working with. And I mentioned the term KYC. That is know your customer, and that's like us as a company knowing our customer. And that's a big movement, I would say, in the industry right now in terms of enhancing that. So that's like the first layer, because what that's done is it's ensured that bad actors really can't come in because a lot of them are afraid to obviously expose themselves. And then B, once they do come in and they later commit bad activity, we're able to place blocks on that identification to prevent them from coming back in, because a tactic that a lot of fraudsters use is they create multiple accounts on distributors to kind of hide their fraud and sort of spread it out, and scale fraud, basically. So this has definitely helped to prevent some of that. In addition, we put a lot of protections on accounts itself. So we have a one account, one owner policy. So there can only be one owner as an account, but you can have multiple roles and team members under it. However, one owner controls the entire account. We've added two-factor authentication, password security. We also have what are called artist watch lists. So we do protect some of our clients as well as those that are major record label clients or folks that are trademarked, to ensure that if you are using Beyonce's name, for example, we will know and we will have checks and balances to ensure that you have the rights to do that. And chances are Beyonce will be a difficult one to get the rights for, but that's an example as well. In addition, we actually launched a tool that we like to call Stream Save. So one of the things that's happening right now, I'd say in 2024, is innocent parties are getting caught up in the fight against these bad actors. And bad actors are taking music and placing them in playlists in addition to any client that they might represent, and inflating those streams. And unfortunately, innocent parties are being affected by streaming fraud as well. So we wanted to create a tool that can be transparent. So all of the reports that we get from the DSPs, we're also showing you, the user, so that you can work with us to say, hey, this doesn't look right, et cetera. And then we can escalate that to a DSP to protect you and effectively help you stream safely. So those are some of the tools that we use. There's a lot more, again, on our website. StreamSafe to us is one of the ones that we're most proud of, because we want it to be very transparent about what it is a DSP was telling us, and ensure that all of our clients had access to that, so that they didn't live in sort of like this siloed place without getting access to information.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. It's just bonkers to me that people have built a business around trying to cheat DSPs for 5/100ths of a penny.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And I will also say that one big thing that we are doing that I would say is one of the most, like, I would say, beautiful things about what this fight means is the Music Fights Fraud Alliance. So, we've teamed up with our competitors, and it's created something to where we all can benefit on this. And this isn't sort of it's an ability for us to really be able to share issues and problems, and for us to even say, here's what we're building. Like, we're cool with you building the same thing because it's helped us in this way. So it's like the greatest thing possible to be able to talk to our competitors and say, fraud is not, proprietary in terms of technology or concepts, so that we can all do our part to help the problem.
Well, I think the rising tide lifts all boats in this scenario. So you've talked a little bit about what Symphonic has done. Let's talk about the results of those efforts.
Yep. For sure. So first, with the KYC, we've started to, with the identity verification piece, and just putting a greater emphasis on knowing our customer with different kind of like checks and balances throughout the ecosystem. We have certainly weeded out, bad actors that we've been able to find. We had noticed that we like to call them internally rings, where basically there could be, 10 accounts that are connected to an individual, or 10 accounts that are connected to multiple individuals, and so forth. So that's certainly, been a really great thing to kind of like weed out and clean the system in that regard. And we have seen fraud in general go down. Because of that, also, we've started to see that the actual artificial streams of certain DSPs are going down. At the same point, now with other DSPs providing us data, we're seeing that there's work to be done in some of those other DSPs still. And then there's also questions that we continue to have in terms of content, landing on some of these stream reports and so forth that we believe is legitimate, but that the DSP is telling us not. And that's the best part, where what we get to do is we are able to then collaborate, ask questions, and really work with our DSPs in a way that I don't think we've ever done before, from a distribution perspective or analytics perspective, et cetera. But in general, we are definitely not perfect. There's no distribution company that I think can safely say that they are in terms of this battle. But I would say that we've seen fraud decrease a good, 50%, I would say, year over year, which is incredibly promising. And certainly other types of fraud, such as copyright claims and so forth, are also decreasing because of the fact that folks that generally conduct themselves in streaming fraud might conduct themselves in other types of fraud, such as infringement and so forth.
Yeah, and I've personally sat and watched the trust and safety department grow over time, and the investment from Symphonic in that lane, I think, is remarkable. It's easy to invest in people who add to the bottom line. It's a hard business justification to try to invest in people who are just there in a protective stance. But
Absolutely.
I think it's so important for our clients. You taught, and especially because of the innocent artists that are getting pulled into this, as you mentioned a little bit. So, what are some of the other challenges that you've found as you've navigated this and kind of built out our approach here around fraud and around copyright and all of that?
Yeah. So one of the big ones is we have so much data that often it's difficult to dispute some of the findings that a DSP provides us. And it creates a very big challenge for us to be able to talk to every client about every stream that's like deemed artificial. And that's why we've tried to create, that stream safe product to be able to say, here's what we've been given, let us know of anything, and also provide artists with best practices and so forth, which I'd be glad to mention a few here as well on the call. So that would be, I would say, the biggest challenge. In addition to that, it's just like the nature of how fraudsters think. One of the things that and I would actually say other competitors do, is we try to think like a fraudster, and we actually try to find where these folks are congregating and what they're talking about. It's interesting because we've seen fraudsters get upset about us because of the fact that it's becoming harder to commit fraud with us, which is awesome. That's the exact result we want. At the same time, they're talking about creative methods and unique new things that they're doing that is difficult to control when they're doing it in a coordinated multi-front perspective, right? So I think the evolution of fraud is probably the biggest challenge, but we hope and we think that with the changes that DSPs have done in terms of penalty fees and even monetization changes, that will help with this problem. And in addition, what we are doing would hopefully help with this problem. But it really takes all distributors to kind of have similar policies and similar controls in place in order to kind of effectively bring down the problem month to month.
Well, and I think it's, the data doesn't lie. And I think, there's a lot of, we're going to get into best practices for artists in a moment, but I remember several years ago, there was a situation where US based artists would have massive amounts of streaming happening in Buffalo, New York.
Yeah.
Because there was a VPN situation with a bot farm in Buffalo, New York. There were servers there that somebody had accessed and was running that through, not from Buffalo, no real listeners from Buffalo, but the data doesn't lie. And so I think, across the board, I think everybody's got to understand that we see these spikes and these peaks. And listen, if you're from Nashville, Tennessee, and your biggest audience is in Kuala Lumpur, you've got issues. You've
Yeah.
got serious issues, and everyone in the industry can see that. Major label A&R can see that. The DSPs can see that. Distributors can see that. Music publishers can see that. You can't falsely inflate talent.
Yeah.
I think if there's a takeaway from this, that's got to be one of the big takeaways.
Absolutely.
But let's put ourselves in the artist's shoes for a moment. Let's talk about some things that an artist or an artist team, management company, label can and should do to make sure that we're taking appropriate steps and not accidentally
Yeah.
getting in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll try to be as brief, but also as detailed as I possibly can on each one of these. And we do have an expansive article as well that you can, read and just get a lot of findings from. And we're going to continue to actually update that as we learn more as well. So the first thing I would say is the most obvious one: do not pay for streams. So if you find any service that is out there that is promising you, X dollars for X streams, do not do that. What we recommend is working with a trusted, third party provider. We have great friends over at Groover, Submit Hub, and so forth. Those are, legitimate services that also are in the same fight with us, where they're not wanting to work with third party providers that are effectively getting plays for placements and or inflating their playlists. Also, if you're an artist, you might go on Fiverr or Upwork and so forth for the same purpose of having your music be promoted. I strongly advise to caution from using any kind of like third party promoter or marketer on these platforms. And there might be legitimate ones that are on there, but for the most part, everyone that I've ever seen has conducted themselves in a way that is not legitimate. So I think that's one of the biggest ones. Definitely don't pay for a service that offers you dollar or exchange for dollars. Um, Same thing with followers, nothing that guarantees playlist placement. That's a generally kind of like known thing, but believe it or not, a lot of artists continue to do that because I understand we all want to grow and we all want guaranteed methods of growing, but that's definitely one of the biggest ones that creates a lot of issues.
Yeah,
Um,
I think general takeaway from this is that you can't guarantee success in the music business, and
no,
anybody who does guarantee it's full of it. I think
exactly.
guaranteed efforts are great. I mean, I think companies that show up and have a track record and are able to show models of how things they've done have worked for other artists, brilliant. And I think going
Yeah,
with trusted sources is really important, but you can't guarantee
100%.
results.
Totally agree. I would say another thing to do is to have a heart to heart with your collaborators. You could very well be an artist that is doing a song with another artist, songwriter, whatever it might be, and you might not be conducting yourself in a way that might be problematic, but they might be because they have the interest and intention of growing as well. So I've often seen that there's an artist that might work with another artist, or one artist that is working with a promotional agency that is stating all these different things that they're doing, but really they're using a lot of these bots and so forth as well. I think it's very important that if you've got an asset or a product and you're going to work with anyone to get that product really known, it's just really big to be as clear as possible with them about what they're going to do, and to just tell them to cut through the shit really at the end of the day and actually tell you what they're going to be doing. And to really tell your collaborating artists and so forth, featuring or other primaries, to just let you know what they will be doing. Because oftentimes that's another issue that happens that I've seen with multiple primaries featuring artists, where one goes ahead and does something else, right? To Randall's point as well about the Kuala Lumpur, reviewing data carefully about how you're doing is actually a very big one too, because if you start to notice that you are an artist in one region and you're getting traction in a total other one that wouldn't make much sense, chances are something's happening with your music that you might not be causing. Those are the moments where it's totally cool to say, "Hey, Symphonic, I'm noticing this. What's going on?" We want to hear about those things, and we want to actually tell our DSP partners what's going on here, because this is an artist trying to do the right thing and reporting this information to us. And we, provide as much of that in real time with our analytics products, where you're able to see spikes, but at the same time see territories see the actual playlists where stream consumption is happening. And if you don't recognize that playlist or you have concerns over that playlist, we're more than willing for you to report that to us for us to then have a feedback loop to the DSPs. I can tell you very recently, even an artist reported irregularities with a song from a couple of playlists as well as from non-playlists. We were able to report that to Spotify, and they were incredibly quick and kind about reviewing the issue and actually rectifying it and ensuring that no penalties were going to happen. So the feedback loop, as much as possible in real time, is better than perhaps potentially waiting for results. So I highly encourage the data review. Unfortunately, we're all business intelligence experts now because of this stuff.
Well, and honesty is always the best policy, right?
Yeah.
If you see something, say something. Speaking of saying something, we've talked about a lot about bad players
Yeah.
in the space, but there's a lot of good guys, right?
Cool.
I mean, the Music Fights Fraud Alliance obviously is a collective of the good folks fighting the good fight here. But let's talk about some others, because there are some specific companies who've literally built their entire existence around helping this problem out.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, first, there's a company out there called Beat Dap that we want to give, a shout out to. We're cool with those folks. They're out there actually reviewing a lot of the actual data from the DSPs and partnering with the DSPs, which is helping to inform us about actually fraudulent actors. So they're a company that's mostly working with our DSP partners, but I think is an important one for the industry.
High
You
five
as
to Andrew
artists,
Beatty. High five to Andrew Beatty.
hi,
Right there,
Andrew
buddy.
Morgan. There you go. See, boom. I also want to say a couple things. I mentioned Submit Hub and Groover as legitimate third-party providers as well. One thing that Submit Hub has that I think artists can benefit from is they have a playlist checker. So, an example, if you're noticing that your music is on a playlist that you're concerned about, you can take that playlist link, throw it on Submit Hub's playlist checker, and see if Submit Hub at least has determined that that playlist is problematic. Another company out there called artist.tools, that's the actual URL, has the same thing. And these are free tools that I think are great to self-check. And if you've been able to determine that there's evidence of this playlist being deemed as fraudulent, that's information that we love to get to then again supply up to a DSP, because we can actually go as far as removing your song from that playlist as well and preventing that fraud. So that's an area that we're actually going to be looking at touting a lot more and trying to actually put a part of our experience, because we've seen that the majority of fraud is happening with music landing on playlists and those playlists being bought as well.
Awesome. Okay, so we've gone a lot, big deep dive into fraud here. I think we've covered a lot of ground. I'm not letting you get out of here without asking you some of the questions that I always ask our guests on the Music 360. I didn't even prepare you for this.
So. I know it. I can't wait.
I want you to look into your crystal ball. Let's look at 25. Let's look at 26. What's changing? What's happening? Where's the industry going? What are you most excited about moving forward?
So I think what's happening in 25 and 26, if I were to be this good at predicting the future, I would say the standards are getting more increasingly difficult, right? All of our DSP partners, Apple, Spotify, etc., in a way that I understand, but that might be difficult for artists to kind of like live. They're increasing the standards for what it is that we are supplying to them. And what I mean by that is certain things are becoming requirements, whether it's credits on a track or potentially KYC information as part of metadata. These are things that I would say will kind of become, I would say, normal things for distributors to provide. And I think that makes our jobs a little bit more challenging. It potentially means you as an artist having to fill out more information or more detail than you might have been used to. But I think ultimately that will help prevent the problem, or at least help with reducing problems that we've been talking about today. I do think other distributors over time will probably have a hard time kind of working the way that they are if they're not adopting similar things that we're doing, which for us, it's good. But at the same time, we want to see everybody adopt aspects of identity verification and, other sort of like security methods, because it will only help those businesses as well. And I think there's a lot obviously around AI right now and a lot of discussion on that. We don't have a crystal ball to know what litigation will result in terms of what happens from there. But we're trying to take an approach that is just being really realistic and not kidding ourselves. We've seen other distributors say very much that it's like we don't accept AI in our platform, or we don't have AI. And I can tell you that is an increasingly difficult thing to actually say with a straight face. Every distributor, I would say, has content that is generated either partially with AI or 100% with AI. And I think in general, that's not necessarily a terrible thing as long as the distributor is being responsible with the intake of this content. So we're looking to add more of that within our platform to ensure that you as a user, if you're using these means, you're telling us, and that we have that information to be able to make decisions, as well as be able to police it to protect other rights holders that are out there. So I would say that's kind of one of the more exciting things that we're doing. And I would say something that I can see happening more and more, because the AI train, no matter what's happening in litigation, I think is going to be very difficult to stop. And I believe that all distributors have a responsibility to not kid ourselves and not say that it's not accepted or that we don't have it, but do things that will actually help police it as best as we can.
Yeah, I think it's notable to take notice of what's happening in Washington, D.C. around AI as well. The Copyright Office is now requiring you to disclose if you have AI in your compositions. It is very, very much part of what we're doing moving forward. And like we've talked about so many times, I view it as a plugin. I view it as a tool. If it's used as a tool and you put creativity into the tool and you manipulate that, I don't think anybody has a problem with it.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I think it's going to, the AI topic can get incredibly expansive. I think there's aspects of it that are certainly scary and dangerous. I think for the aspect of creativity and music, I prefer human assisted or AI assisted to the human touch, because I think that's where we're going to see pretty amazing creativity. And at the end of the day, like, you can make a song 100% AI, but somebody still has to listen to it. If the song sounds like crap, no one's going to listen to it.
I've heard some garbage AI songs. So last question, sir. You're almost done.
All right.
Who are you listening to right now? Which artist? Which artist, current artist? Don't say James Taylor. What artist are you currently vibing on right now?
Man,
not a symphonic client. Let me throw that out there.
Yeah, no, for sure. So my background is electronic music and so forth. So I tend to crate dig, and I tend to find artists that I've never heard of before. But I'll mention some that the electronic folks might be familiar. There's an artist named Bicep that I like quite a bit, so definitely jamming out to him. There's another artist, named Justin J, that's pretty solid his way. Another one named A-Trip. Actually, Charlie XCX did a great song with Shy Girl that came out a couple weeks ago called 365. So I'm not having a brat summer, but I'm having a brat fall right now, because I think it's pretty slamming, actually. So I generally tend to just listen to a lot of what the algorithm is telling me, and then that gets me to actually create dig and sort of look at different playlists as well. But all the random electronic stuff is certainly what I'm jamming. And I would definitely say, to give props, what our awesome deal makers like Randall and others actually sign, because they end up signing artists that we grew up with, and as well as signing artists that are doing great things today that I think are going to be doing greater things tomorrow. So it's really, really promising.
So there you have it, folks. Jorge Brea on his Brat Summer and on streaming fraud. Jorge, thank you for being here with us today. This is, I think, a really important topic that I don't think enough people are talking about. And hopefully we can change that a little bit, one podcast at a time, one article at a time. Folks, if you're interested in learning more about streaming fraud, there are articles out there. There's a lot of good information out there. I encourage you to do your research, Music Business Worldwide, et cetera. There's information to be gained. I thank you all for being here. I'm Randall Foster. I'm the host of the Music Industry 360 podcast. And without you, our listener, this thing wouldn't be possible. So thank you for joining us today. Jorge, thank you for joining us today. And stay tuned for our next podcast coming shortly next month.